Hey, Science of Cooking, if you're listening to this, then I am in Denton doing jury duty, so I hope your finals went well, and I did my presentation over the culture of tortillas. I chose this because I really enjoy Mexican food, both traditional and Tex-Mex, as well as Latin cuisine, and tortillas is a pretty big staple in each of those food types. So, some things you need to know about the culture of Mexico. Mexico is heavily influenced by 5 tribes that inhabited it at different times. Those tribes were the Olmecs, the Zapotecs, the Mayans, the Toltecs, and the Aztecs. So the Aztecs are the most recent tribe, and Spaniard Hernan Cortez came and conquered the Aztecs in the name of Spain, and Spain began colonizing Nueva España. So that's the area that is now Mexico. Mexico today, the culture is very family-oriented, and often 3 generations live under the same roof. Almost 77% of Mexicans are Roman Catholic, and 3 to 5% are Santeria, which is a branch of Catholicism, but its focus is more on worshiping the saints. A lot of Mexico's traditions come from the indigenous peoples and the Spanish, so the tribes that I listed earlier, and the Spanish that came and conquered Mexico. Mexico's government is a federal republic with 31 states. Each state has their own government. Most states have a unicameral legislature, and its constitution is similar to the United States Constitution. The country has 3 branches, just like ours, and the Constitution also states that they have personal freedoms and civil liberties. Mexico also has a free market economy, and the current GDP is $2.2 trillion. So tortillas are thin, round, unleavened cornmeal or wheat flour bread, usually eaten hot with a topping or filling like ground meat or cheese. It's used in a lot of traditional Mexican and Tex-Mex meals. There are some key differences between flour tortillas and corn tortillas. Corn tortillas are thought of as more traditionally Mexican, where flour tortillas are typically used in Tex-Mex meals. So for corn tortillas, which is what I'm going to be focusing on today because it's more of a traditional tortilla, you need 2 cups of masa harina, 1.5 cups of hot water, and you can add more if you need to, half a teaspoon of salt, and then instructions. In a large bowl, you mix the salt and the masa harina together. You pour 1.5 cups of hot water onto the dough and mix it with a spoon or just your hands to form a big ball. The dough should be firm and springy and shouldn't be super dry or sticky. If the mixture is too dry, you need to add more water in small amounts until the dough feels how it should. So when you're done, cover the bowl with a cloth napkin and let the dough rest for about an hour. Then you want to preheat the griddle or large frying pan on medium-high heat. Pinch off a golf ball-sized piece of masa harina and form it into a ball by rolling it into a circular motion in the palm of your hand. Put the masa ball in between 2 pieces of plastic wrap, parchment, or wax paper and flatten it using a tortilla press. If you don't have a tortilla press, you can also just use a rolling pin, but you want it to be pretty thin and pretty flat. Gently remove the flattened masa from plastic wrap and cook on the hot griddle for about 30 seconds to 1 minute, depending on how hot the surface or the griddle is. You want the tortilla to have beautiful brown marks, so that kind of like brown, almost like a freckly look that it gets is kind of what you're going for. So flip the tortilla over and cook on the other side for 30 seconds to about 1 minute. The tortilla may start to puff in the middle, and that is okay. It will deflate later. So remove the tortilla and place it between a cloth napkin or in a tortilla warmer to keep it warm. And just keep repeating that until all of your dough is gone. So before you could buy masa harina just from the store, they had to go through this process called nixtamalization, and it's the ancient process where the corn kernels are heated in an alkaline solution of water and calcium oxide, which is basically lime. So to remove the outside layer known as the pericarp, you would have to soak it in that and heat it up. So corn kernels should be kept in the alkaline solution overnight after heating. And at the end of the standing time, the corn would be washed 2 or 3 times with clean water just to kind of separate out some of the stuff that came off of the corn. The wastewater from this process is typically called nehayote. Corn kernels are then ground to form dough, which is molded into the characteristic form of tortillas. and then the dough is heated up and it makes a tortilla. So obviously this is sort of a challenge for the food industry just because having to keep the corn sitting for overnight is a long time in the process. So pretty much what they do is they have several batches of corn sitting at one time so that they always have one that's ready to go to make more tortillas. So I thought it was interesting that this is one of the ways that like traditional tortillas are made in factories still today. And here is a recipe for flour tortillas. You want to have 4 cups of all-purpose flour, 1 teaspoon of salt, 2 teaspoons of baking powder, which is actually going to help make these flour tortillas look kind of light and fluffy and not as dense as the corn tortillas. So that's really the main difference between them, that and just basic texture, taste things. 2 tablespoons of lard and 1.5 cups of water. So you start by whisking the flour, salt, and baking powder together in a mixing bowl. You mix in the lard with your fingers until the flour resembles cornmeal. You add the water and mix until the dough comes together, and you place on a lightly floured surface and knead a few minutes until smooth and elastic. Then divide the dough into, this says 24 equal pieces, but you can do as many as you want, as big or as small as you want them to be. And then preheat a large skillet over medium-high heat. Use a well-floured rolling pin to roll dough into a ball, into a thin, round tortilla. So mechanically, it's the same. It's just that chemically this has a leavener and the corn tortillas don't. So tortillas was the name that the Spanish gave to the unleavened bread that they found among the Aztecs in the 1500s. Tortillas are actually believed to have originated in 10,000 BCE, but they weren't documented like in a recipe until the mid-1600s. And the first tortillas were corn tortillas because the Aztecs who created them had access to a lot of corn. So the influence of tortillas on Mexican culture. Tortillas influence a lot of the food, which is a huge part of culture, just because a tortilla is used a lot as a base. It's the base in enchiladas, tacos, soft tacos, fajitas, flautas, tostadas, and many more dishes. Tortillas started out as a base just because the flavor went with a lot of different things and they had a lot of access to corn to make the tortillas. The use of corn tortillas is still prevalent, so Mexico still grows a lot of corn. So Mexico still grows a lot of corn today. It is their second most common crop, right behind sugarcane. The price of tortillas has actually steadily risen, though, just because they process corn differently. Now that high fructose corn syrup is a popular thing, they separate the grain differently. And so to kind of counteract that, the tortilla manufacturers have been adding in fillers. And so the tortilla has gone up in price and down in quality, which has led to a 40% decrease in the last 30 years of tortilla consumption.